The first time Marcus stepped into a wedding hall alone, he felt every pair of eyes turned toward him, not because he was important, but because he wasn't supposed to be alone. His navy suit hung a little loose on his tired frame, and his hands trembled just slightly as he adjusted the cuffs. The golden lights above shimmered like distant stars, laughter echoing across the grand ballroom in Charlotte, North Carolina. Couples swayed together on the dance floor, friends clinked glasses, families posed for photos beneath cascading white roses, and Marcus stood near the entrance, holding a small wrapped gift, wishing he had the courage to turn around and leave. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of single parents trying their best, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even broken hearts can find their way back to light. Marcus hadn't always walked into rooms alone. 3 years earlier, he used to hold his wife's hand at events just like this. But life had shifted in a single brutal winter. After months of hospital visits and whispered prayers, she was gone, leaving him with a 5-year-old daughter named Sophie and a silence in the house that felt louder than any storm. Becoming a single father hadn't been part of his plan. He worked long hours as a mechanic in a small auto shop on the outskirts of town, grease permanently lining his nails no matter how hard he scrubbed. He learned how to braid hair by watching online tutorials at midnight. He burned dinners before finally mastering macaroni without overcooking it. He packed lunches with little handwritten notes that said, "Dad loves you more than the moon." But tonight was different. Tonight was his cousin Aaron's wedding, and Sophie wasn't there. She was at home with a babysitter, a kind college student named Hannah from next door. Marcus had almost canceled. He had stood in his small kitchen, staring at the invitation for 10 minutes straight, wondering if he even belonged at celebrations anymore. Weddings were supposed to be for couples, for laughter, for people who still believed in forever. Still, Aaron had insisted. "Family shows up," he had said, so Marcus showed up. He took a slow breath and stepped farther into the ballroom. The scent of fresh flowers and champagne made him feel dizzy. He spotted relatives gathered around circular tables draped in ivory cloth. Some waved politely, others gave that look, the sympathetic tilt of the head, the soft smile that said, "We're so sorry for your loss." He hated that look. It made him feel fragile, like glass about to crack. He found his seat near the back. A small card read Marcus Hill in elegant gold script. Know and guest. As the ceremony began, the music swelled, and Aaron's bride, Rebecca, walked down the aisle glowing with joy. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered his own wedding day in a chapel just 2 hours away. He remembered promises, laughter, dancing barefoot on polished wood floors. He remembered believing that nothing could tear them apart. Halfway through the vows, Marcus excused himself and slipped outside into the cool evening air. The North Carolina sky was streaked with pink and lavender as the sun began to set. He leaned against a column, pressing his palms to his eyes. He wasn't jealous. He was just tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of pretending he didn't miss her every second. Tired of doing bedtime stories alone and sitting on one side of the couch. Inside, applause erupted as the couple kissed. Marcus wiped his face quickly and straightened up. He could do this. He could survive one wedding. He walked back in just as the reception began. Music pulsed through the speakers. Guests lined up for food. Children ran between tables, their laughter light and careless. Marcus poured himself a glass of water and stood near the edge of the room, unsure what to do with his hands. That was when he heard it. "Look at me." The voice rang out clear and bright, cutting through the music. Marcus froze. He turned toward the entrance, and there she was. Clara Bennett, his neighbor from across the narrow lawn of their small suburban street, stood just inside the doors, slightly out of breath, wearing a soft green dress that caught the light like early spring leaves. In one hand, she held something small and pink. "Look at me," she called again, waving. At first, Marcus thought she was shouting to someone else, but her eyes were locked on him. People turned, murmuring. The music dipped lower as the band paused between songs. Clara walked forward with determined steps, ignoring the curious stares. She stopped right in front of Marcus and gently lifted what she was holding. It was Sophie. His daughter was wearing a tiny white cardigan over a pale blue dress, her hair neatly braided, better than he had ever managed, with a small ribbon tied at the end. Her cheeks were flushed from excitement. Marcus blinked, confusion flooding him. He had left her at home, safe, tucked into pajamas. Clara smiled softly. "She didn't want you to be alone tonight." The words hit him like a wave. Apparently, after Marcus left, Sophie had asked Hannah why Daddy looked so sad. Hannah, unsure how to answer, had mentioned the wedding. Sophie had grown quiet. Then she had marched across the lawn in her socks and knocked on Clara's door. Clara had known Marcus and Sophie for 2 years. She had watched him shovel snow alone in winter and chase Sophie around with a water hose in summer. She had seen the exhaustion in his shoulders and the love in his eyes. When Sophie told her, with all the seriousness of a 5-year-old, that her daddy needed a date, Clara didn't laugh. Instead, she helped her change into a dress. She braided her hair, and she drove her to the wedding. Marcus knelt down slowly, his heart pounding. "Sophie?" She grinned and threw her arms around his neck. "You look lonely, Daddy." The simplicity of it shattered him. He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. The ballroom lights blurred as tears filled his eyes again. But this time they were different, warmer, softer. Clara stood quietly beside them, her expression gentle. She hadn't come for attention. She hadn't come to embarrass him. She had come because a little girl believed her father deserved company. Guests began to smile. Someone near the dance floor clapped softly. The band resumed playing. A slower song now, almost as if the moment had shifted the entire room. Marcus stood, still holding Sophie's hand. He looked at Clara, really looked at her, at the kindness etched into her features, at the quiet strength in her posture. He had noticed her before, of course. She was the neighbor who brought over cookies during Christmas, the one who fixed his mailbox after a storm knocked it down, the one who waved every morning as she left for work at the local elementary school where she taught 2nd grade. But tonight, under the golden glow of wedding lights, she looked different. Or maybe he finally saw her. "Would you," he began, his voice unsteady, "like to stay?" Clara nodded. They didn't rush to the dance floor. They didn't make a scene. Marcus carried Sophie to a nearby table, helped her sit, and brought her a small plate of cake. Clara sat across from them, laughing softly as Sophie got frosting on her nose. Later, when a gentle melody drifted through the hall, Sophie tugged at his sleeve and demanded to dance. Marcus hesitated only for a second before stepping onto the floor. He lifted his daughter into his arms and swayed slowly, her small head resting against his shoulder. As they turned in quiet circles, he caught Clara watching them. Not with pity, not with sadness, with hope. After a moment, she stepped closer. Marcus extended his free hand without thinking, and she took it. Together, the three of them moved in an imperfect rhythm, a small, fragile circle in the middle of a grand celebration. For the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel like the widower in the corner. He felt like a father, like a man still capable of joy. The night didn't erase his grief. It didn't magically fix the loneliness waiting at home, but it shifted something. It reminded him that love didn't end. It changed shape. It grew in unexpected places. Sometimes it knocked on your door in socks and asked your neighbor for help. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Marcus walked Clara and Sophie back to the car. The air was cool again, stars scattered across the sky. He looked at Clara, gratitude swelling in his chest. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if this was the beginning of something new or simply a beautiful moment in a long journey. But he knew one thing. He wasn't as alone as he thought. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that even in the darkest seasons kindness can spark light, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Your support keeps stories like this alive. And before this story ends, I have a special request. Comment the word hope if you believe that love can return in unexpected ways. That night, as Marcus tucked Sophie into bed and stood at the window watching the soft glow from Clara's porch light across the lawn, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a very long time. Possibility. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with grand speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it arrives because a little girl refuses to let her father stand alone in a crowded room. And sometimes, all it takes is someone brave enough to shout, "Look at me!" to remind you that life is still waiting, full of music, light, and second chances.